You know, one of the biggest problems people face, and they don't even realize it, is their fear of stepping up and taking risks. And you see this everywhere. Men who play it safe, who avoid the difficult conversations, who refuse to challenge themselves because they're afraid of failure, rejection, or discomfort. They rationalize it by saying they're just being careful, that they don't want to make mistakes, that they're just waiting for the right moment. But let's be clear, this isn't wisdom. It's fear disguised as rationality. And women notice it instantly. Because here's the truth, life doesn't reward hesitation. It doesn't reward avoidance. It doesn't reward comfort seeking. It rewards those who are willing to step into uncertainty, to take a risk, to face difficulty head on. If you avoid challenges, if you back down when things get tough, if you let fear dictate your actions, you become invisible. Not just to women, but to the world. And that is a terrible place to be. Think about it. Why do people admire leaders? Why are we drawn to individuals who take bold action, who carve their own path, who refuse to settle? Because they embody strength. They project certainty. And certainty, conviction, that's what makes people take notice. That's what earns respect. A man who faces challenges head on, who isn't paralyzed by fear, who is willing to make mistakes and learn from them, that's a man who commands attention. That's a man who isn't weak. Now, what happens when you avoid challenges, when you play it safe, when you never push yourself beyond what's comfortable? You start shrinking. You start fading. Your world becomes smaller, your influence diminishes, and soon enough you become the kind of person who watches life happen instead of making life happen. And that is the ultimate tragedy. And women, they can sense this immediately. They may not be able to articulate it, but they feel it. When a man is hesitant, when he won't take charge, when he's constantly looking for permission to act, it sets off alarms because it signals weakness. It signals that when life gets hard, this is the guy who's going to fold, who's going to retreat, who's going to look for someone else to lead, someone else to take responsibility. And no woman wants to carry that burden. This isn't about recklessness. It's not about running headfirst into danger without thinking. It's about embracing responsibility. It's about understanding that growth only happens in discomfort. If you avoid risk, you avoid growth. If you avoid struggle, you avoid strength. And if you avoid making hard decisions, life will make them for you and you won't like the outcome. So what do? You take action, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's uncertain, even when you don't feel ready, because nobody ever truly feels ready. That's a myth. Readiness comes from stepping forward despite the fear, despite the doubt, despite the uncertainty. And over time, as you build that habit, you develop confidence. Not the fake kind, not the kind that's based on empty words or wishful thinking, but real confidence. The kind that's built through experience, through resilience, through proof that you are capable. Because if you want to stop being weak in the eyes of others, you have to stop being weak in the eyes of yourself. You have to earn your own respect before you can expect anyone else to respect you. You have to prove to yourself that you can handle challenges, that you can take a hit and keep moving, that you don't need permission to live fully and boldly. That is what makes you strong. That is what makes people take you seriously. And when you do this, when you stop hiding, when you stop hesitating, when you stop waiting for life to happen and instead take control, you become a force to be reckoned with. People feel it, they see it, and most importantly, you see it in yourself. And that changes everything. You see this all the time, men constantly looking for approval, needing to be reassured that they're good enough, waiting for someone else to tell them they're on the right path. It's subtle at first, a little too eager to please, a little too afraid to disagree, a little too desperate for someone else's permission to feel valuable. But over time, it becomes obvious. the constant fishing for compliments, the inability to make decisions without checking if it's okay first, the anxious need for someone, anyone, to validate their existence. And here's the thing, nothing signals weakness more than that. Because when you're always looking for validation, what you're really saying is, I don't trust myself. I don't believe in my own judgment. I don't think I'm enough unless someone else tells me I am. And people pick up on this immediately, especially women. They might not always say it outright, but they feel it. It's in the way you carry yourself, the way you react to things, the way you hold back when you should be standing firm, and it's unattractive. Because deep down, what women and really what everyone respects is certainty, strength, a man who knows who he is, who doesn't need constant reassurance to feel whole. But the problem is, we live in a culture that encourages this behavior. From an early age, people are conditioned to seek approval. Social media thrives on it. Likes, comments, follows. It's all one big machine designed to make you crave external validation. You post a picture, and if it doesn't get enough engagement, you start questioning yourself. Was it not good enough? Am I not good enough? It's a trap, and it's incredibly dangerous, because the more you rely on others to tell you your worth, the weaker you become. And you see this dynamic play out in relationships. A man who constantly seeks validation from a woman will never be respected by her. She might tolerate it for a while, but deep down she's losing attraction, losing trust in his ability to lead, to stand on his own, because she doesn't want to be the one holding him up all the time. That's exhausting. A woman wants a partner, not a project. Someone who brings stability, not someone who crumbles the moment he doesn't get approval. So what's the solution? It's simple, but not easy. You have to build yourself from the inside out. You have to learn to validate yourself, not in an arrogant, superficial way, but in a deep, grounded way that comes from genuinely knowing who you are and what you stand for. And that starts with taking responsibility. Because the more you take control of your own life, the less you need others to do it for you. You start making decisions for yourself. You start setting your own standards instead of waiting for someone else to do it. You start measuring your worth by your own progress, not by whether or not someone else approves. And you'll notice something when you do this. The moment you stop desperately seeking validation is the moment people start giving it to you. Because now you're not looking for it. You're not asking for permission to be confident. You just are. You don't need someone to tell you you're on the right path because you already know. And that is magnetic. That is powerful. People respect that because it's rare. But more importantly, you respect yourself. And that changes everything. Because when you stop looking outward for validation, you start looking inward for strength. And once you find that, no one can take it from you. You walk into a room, and before you even say a word, people have already made a judgment about you. They don't even realize they're doing it. It's instinctive, the way you carry yourself, the way you stand, the way you move, all of it sends a message. And if that message is one of weakness, if your posture is slouched, if your gaze is uncertain, if your movements are hesitant, then you've already lost half the battle. Because people, especially women, are highly attuned to these signals. They can tell within seconds whether you're someone who carries strength or someone who shrinks into the background. And it's not just about attraction, it's about respect, it's about presence. A man who takes up space, who holds himself with confidence, who moves with intention, he doesn't need to say much to command attention. But a man who looks uncomfortable in his own skin, who fidgets, who avoids eye contact, who constantly shrinks as if he's apologizing for existing, he will be overlooked. Not because he doesn't have value, not because he doesn't have something to offer, but because he's sending the wrong signals. And people, especially women, respond to those signals whether they're aware of it or not. Think about it. If you see a man walk into a room, shoulders back, head held high, movements slow and deliberate, you assume something about him. Maybe you assume he's competent, maybe you assume he's confident, maybe you assume he's someone worth paying attention to. And the key thing here is this. People treat you based on the assumptions they make about you. If you project strength, they treat you as strong. If you project uncertainty, they treat you as uncertain. And this is why body language is so crucial. It's not just an afterthought. It's not something superficial. It's a reflection of how you see yourself. A man who believes in his own worth doesn't cower. He doesn't make himself small. He doesn't send the message, please don't notice me. Instead, he moves with certainty. He speaks with clarity. He looks people in the eye, not with arrogance, but with the quiet assurance of someone who knows he belongs. And this isn't something you fake. That's the mistake a lot of men make. They think if they just force themselves to stand up straight, if they just mimic confidence, then everything will change. But that's not how it works. Because true presence comes from within. It's not just about how you stand, it's about how you feel when you stand. It's not just about eye contact, it's about believing you have the right to look people in the eye in the first place. So the real question isn't just how do I fix my body language? The real question is, what's causing me to shrink in the first place? Maybe it's fear, maybe it's self-doubt, maybe it's years of conditioning that taught you to play small, to avoid confrontation, to never take up too much space. But whatever it is, you have to confront it, because if you don't, it will control you, and as long as it controls you, you will never fully step into your own presence. The solution is to start small. Notice how you carry yourself throughout the day. Catch yourself when you start to shrink, when you start to avoid eye contact, when you start to fold inward. And instead of letting it happen, correct it. Shoulders back, slow down, own the space you're in. Not because you need to impress anyone, but because you refuse to be invisible. And over time, as you make this shift internally, your external presence will follow. And when that happens, people will notice. They won't necessarily be able to put their finger on what changed, but they'll feel it. You'll walk into a room, and instead of being overlooked, you'll be acknowledged. Instead of blending into the background, you'll command respect without even trying. Not because you forced it, but because you finally decided to show up as who you were meant to be. And that makes all the difference. You see it all the time. Men who apologize for everything. Apologizing when they've done nothing wrong. Apologizing for having an opinion. Apologizing for simply taking up space. It becomes a reflex, this constant need to smooth things over, to make sure nobody is upset, to avoid even the slightest hint of conflict. And on the surface, it might seem like a good thing. After all, aren't we taught that being polite, being agreeable, being accommodating makes us better people? But here's the problem. When you apologize too much, when you make it a habit to bend and contort yourself just to keep the peace, what you're really saying is, I don't believe my presence here is justified. I don't believe I have the right to stand my ground. I don't believe my thoughts, my needs, my preferences are worth holding on to if they might inconvenience someone else. And whether you realize it or not, that message is being broadcast loud and clear. People pick up on it. Women pick up on it, and it doesn't inspire respect. It doesn't inspire attraction. It signals weakness. Now let's be clear. This isn't about being rude. It's not about being reckless or inconsiderate. A man who never apologizes, who never admits when he's wrong, is just as weak as the man who apologizes for everything, because both are avoiding something. The overly apologetic man is avoiding conflict, avoiding disapproval, avoiding the discomfort of standing firm when it would be easier to fold. And the man who refuses to ever admit fault is avoiding responsibility, avoiding self-reflection, avoiding the discipline it takes to hold himself to a higher standard. Both are weak, just in different ways. But what we're talking about here is a different kind of strength, the kind that comes from knowing when to stand firm and when to bend, the kind that doesn't seek approval for every little thing, that doesn't need to be constantly reassured, that doesn't crumble under the pressure of someone else's expectations. Because when you are excessively agreeable, when you always go along with what others want, you're not actually being kind. You're being dishonest. You're hiding what you really think, what you really want, who you really are, in the hope that it will make people like you. And the irony is, it does the opposite. People don't respect someone who agrees with everything they say. They don't admire someone who backs down at the first sign of disagreement. And women in particular don't want a man who can't hold his own. They might tolerate it, they might even find it convenient at times, but deep down, they don't trust it. Because if you can't stand up for yourself, how can you stand up for her? If you avoid all conflict, how will you handle real problems when they arise? If you never push back, never assert yourself, never say, no, this is what I believe, and I'm not backing down, then what exactly do you stand for? And that's the key question, because if you want people to take you seriously, if you want to be respected, if you want to be strong in the eyes of others, you have to first be strong in the eyes of yourself. That means you stop apologizing for things that don't require an apology. You stop filtering yourself to avoid potential disagreement. You stop treating every interaction like a test you need to pass to win someone's approval. And here's the best part. When you do this, when you stop being so desperate to be liked, when you stop deluding yourself to avoid conflict, people actually respect you more. They might not always agree with you, but they'll trust you. They'll know that when you speak, you mean it. That when you stand for something, it's because you truly believe in it. That when you apologize, it's because it matters, not because you're afraid. And that shift, that willingness to hold your ground instead of constantly retreating, changes everything. It changes the way people respond to you, the way women perceive you, and most importantly, the way you see yourself. Because strength isn't about never making mistakes. It's about having the courage to own who you are without needing permission. And once you understand that, once you live it, you'll never go back to the man who was too afraid to stand his ground. There's nothing more off-putting than a man who can't control himself, his emotions, his reactions, his sense of stability. A man who's constantly seeking reassurance, constantly needing to be soothed, constantly making his emotions someone else's responsibility. It's exhausting, and people, especially women, pick up on this immediately. They might not always be able to explain it, but they can feel it. Because neediness isn't just about words. It's not just about constantly asking, do you love me? Do you think I'm good enough? Do you still want to be with me? It's in the way you carry yourself, the way you react when things don't go your way, the way you crumble under pressure, looking for someone else to hold you up because you haven't learned how to stand on your own. And this is a problem, because if you don't have emotional stability, if you don't have control over yourself, then what do you have? It's not that emotions are bad, of course not. The idea that men should be emotionless, that they should bury everything deep inside and never feel anything, is absurd. But there's a difference between feeling your emotions and being ruled by them. Strength isn't about suppressing what you feel, it's about mastering it. About understanding that yes, you will have doubts, you will feel insecure, you will struggle. But what matters is how you handle it. Do you let those feelings control you? Do you lash out? Do you collapse? Or do you face them head on, process them, and move forward without making them the world's problem? Because here's the truth. Nobody wants to be responsible for managing your emotions. Nobody. And a woman in particular doesn't want to be in a relationship where she has to be both your partner and your emotional caretaker. She doesn't want to feel like she's walking on eggshells, trying to keep you stable, trying to make sure you don't spiral because you can't handle the weight of your own feelings. That's not a partnership, that's a burden. And over time, it will destroy attraction, destroy respect, and leave you wondering why things fell apart. And yet, so many men don't realize they're doing this. They think they're just being open, just being vulnerable, just expressing themselves. But vulnerability isn't about dumping your emotional baggage onto someone else. True vulnerability is about being honest with yourself first, about facing your own demons, instead of expecting someone else to fix them for you. It's about having the courage to work through your struggles on your own, to develop the inner strength that allows you to be solid, stable, dependable, not just for yourself, but for those around you. And the moment you make this shift, everything changes. When you stop seeking constant validation, when you stop needing someone else to regulate your emotions, when you stop acting out of fear and insecurity, people see it, they feel it. A man who is emotionally stable, who doesn't crumble under pressure, who doesn't make his problems everyone else's responsibility, that is a man who commands respect. A man who women can actually trust, because she knows that when life gets hard, when challenges come, when things don't go according to plan, he's not going to fold. He's going to handle it. So, you have to ask yourself, are you in control of your emotions, or are they in control of you? Are you the kind of man who can hold steady in the face of adversity, or do you let every setback, every doubt, every little bit of uncertainty shake you to your core? Because if you want to be strong, if you want to be respected, if you want to be the kind of man that people look up to, then you have to master yourself first. And when you do that, when you stop needing, stop clinging, stop looking for someone else to hold you together, something incredible happens. You become someone people can rely on, someone women respect, someone who doesn't just survive challenges but thrives through them. And once you reach that point, once you develop that level of strength, you'll never go back to the man who is at the mercy of his own emotion, because now you are in control. And that makes all the difference. Life doesn't reward the man who plays it safe. It doesn't open doors for the one who hesitates, who avoids discomfort, who chooses certainty over growth. Every challenge you dodge, every risk you refuse, chips away at your potential, leaving you weaker, smaller, less than what you could be. And people see it. Women see it. They don't admire a man who shrinks from difficulty. They respect the one who steps into it, who faces the unknown with courage. Because strength isn't found in comfort, it's forged in struggle. And until you embrace that, you will never truly own your life. At the core of all of this is one undeniable truth. Strength isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. Every action, every habit, every way you carry yourself is sending a message about who you are and what you stand for. If that message is one of weakness, if you lack confidence, seek constant validation, apologize for your existence, shrink in the face of challenges, then you will be treated accordingly. But the good news is, you can change, you can take control, you can decide right now that you will no longer be a man who moves through life passively, waiting for permission to be strong, because no one is going to give it to you. Respect isn't handed out freely, it's earned. Strength isn't gifted, it's forged. The only question is, are you willing to do what it takes? Because once you do, once you step up, take ownership, and embody the man you were meant to be, everything changes. And from that moment forward, you will never live as anything less